Greetings from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hendersonville here in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. I'm Becky Reed, and I will be helping facilitate today's service. We are all looking forward to the day in the not too distant future when we can see each other's beautiful faces again. However, despite the lack of in-person gatherings, we still offer many activities that one can join via Zoom. To learn more about what is happening, please visit us at uufhnc.org. Now we make space in head and heart for a time of sharing. We begin with an invocation from Don Rollins, our interim minister. We tell our stories because we are our stories. We carry those stories, some like familiar raps against the cold, some like warning signs, reminders of our failings. Yet so long as we draw breath, we're writing new stories, word at a time, paragraph at a time, chapter at a time. And when the journey is through, our stories will linger in the air, essence of the life we lived, essence of the love we sought to become.
Hello, everybody. Let me echo Becky's warm welcome. We appreciate you spending part of your day or night with us. If this is your first time with us, I'm Don Rollins. I'm the accredited interim minister with our congregation here in beautiful North Carolina. It's a congregation grounded in the historic liberal religious tradition, committed to spiritual growth, supportive community, and peace with justice. It's a tradition that we share and we celebrate. Today's gathering is about the power of story. There's something about a tale well told that speaks to and sometimes for us. And I was reminded of that power earlier this week when I came across this quote from UU minister Kim Hampton. The setting was the 2018 General Assembly, the annual gathering of our denomination. She wrote, "There are so many types of stories, myth, fable, parable, allegory. It can get confusing. But if there's only one thing to remember, it is that stories do three things. 1, they build worlds. 2, they seek truth. And 3, they heal." And part of the reasons the world's great religions still exist is that they offer people a story to enter into, a story that helps them build a world, a worldview, a story that helps them seek truth, and a story that can heal. And I'm still quoting. This does not mean that religion is perfect. Too often those stories break down worlds instead of building them up. They seek to deny truth and cause tremendous pain. And yet they are still here in all their perfections. In this room, she wrote, we are writing our own story. Whether that story builds worlds, seeks truth, and heals is up to us. Before we move into the heart of this service, let me say just a little about the larger process that we've modified for our use, our being the transitions team here at the congregation. Some of you may be familiar with Appreciative inquiry. That's a very structured program to help organizations revisit their history with an eye toward what they do best, and then use those strengths to determine their identity and their purpose and what they have to contribute to the world. This model depends upon stories to unearth as many positive characteristics as possible. We're looking for thick stories, and that means a story that has depth, a story that has many layers and points toward sacred things. Those are thick stories. And let me say this again, the process the fellowship's transition team and I are using to harvest those stories have been streamlined, not only from the original, but also from the version used in some faith traditions. And while this is a common practice, I just want to honor the fuller process too. So today's service is a peek into how storytelling can be gathered and how all those associated with the fellowship may participate as the transition team and I schedule opportunities for your input for your thick stories. Meantime, let's see what Becky and some UUF longtimers have to say.
For the past month, members of our congregation have been sharing many stories about fond and often poignant memories of their time in this fellowship. Today, we're going to visit with folks who not only helped start the fellowship, but who are still with us 40 years later. That is true commitment. Our participants today are Wendell and Deanna Capes and Keith Dalbeck. Welcome.
You're welcome.
So I want to start off, and this will probably be for Wendell because he was here first. What prompted you to start the fellowship in the beginning? You and Deanna.
We had been going to the Ashbrook Church. We moved here in 71, and we went to the Ashbrook Church to begin with, but it's not the same as having a group in your hometown. And so we would go to sharing suppers on the north side of Asheville and get back home at midnight. And the community projects that were centered in Asheville. So it just seemed like it would be really good to have a program in Hendersonville and have our own group in Hendersonville so we could do community things in Hendersonville and be more centered in Hendersonville. So in 1977, at a council meeting at the Asheville Church, I mentioned that at some time we would have a Unitarian group in Hendersonville, and we needed to support that. The Asheville Church did, and they were in the middle of a fundraising campaign to expand Sandburg Hall, and that was not a good time to talk about members leaving and going to a Hendersonville group, because about 1/3 of the members were from Henderson County, and of course that wasn't my intention, but I thought we really needed to have a fellowship in Hendersonville. So a group of eight of us from the Asheville Church got together and talked about starting a fellowship. It was Marilyn McMinn McCready and Ray Bodie and Donna Bodie, and Deanna and I, and John Woody and Portia. And so we had a meeting at Marilyn McMinn's house, and that was our first meeting to kind of form the fellowship. And then we started advertising in the paper and meeting at the First Federal Savings and Loan Building till they had, the president had his secretary call me one week and said, "Oh, you can't meet here anymore. We didn't know you were a religious group, Unitarian Universalist." so and they called me on a Wednesday and said we couldn't meet there on Sunday. And so I said, "Well, that's not fair because we've already advertised. We don't have any way of telling people we won't be here on Sunday, so we need to meet at least one more week." And she said, "Well, you're going to have to come talk to the president because he already decided that you can't meet here." And so I did. I went and talked to him, and I said, "We don't mind going someplace else, but at least we need to meet here one more week." And so he relented and let us meet there one more time. And so then we went to, where did we go next? Oh, we went to, I think the Rosie Edwards School Building, that the Presbyterian church that had split off. They had been meeting there for a number of months and had just left, and so they let us meet in the auditorium for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they told us, "Oh, we're not going to have any religious groups meet here anymore." so they kicked us out of there. So we went to the Girl Scout cabin, which was kind of nice, except in the wintertime, we said people, we could not only hear them speaking, we could see them speaking. So it was so cold in there that you could see their breath. I mean, and the furnace did not work too well. You could see cracks in the corner of the wall. You could see daylight coming through. And so it wasn't too good as far as the environment. So we met there for probably a couple of years. And then the Opportunity House came up that we could meet there. They were beside the hospital, and so we started meeting there. And then they bought another building just down the street, and we moved with them to that new building. And then they bought the old IGA grocery store on the Asheville Highway, and we went out there and we met in the back room. And then we didn't have enough room, so we rented more space. And then we grew too big, and so we got in the bigger room up front, And then we got too big for that, so we met in their big auditorium. And I think it was Francis Underhill that said we're like nomads. We'd come there and pull out our podium that Francis had built, and we stored everything in there and locked it. And we'd go back in the storeroom and bring that out in the morning. And but we really got too big for that, and that's when we started looking for another building. You want to talk about the new? Yeah, Barbara Hochfield was president, and we decided that we would buy some land and build a building. Nobody really wanted to do that because building a building is such an effort. But it's hard to find a church building for sale. Actually, the center, what the Sammy Williams Center was that was an old Jehovah's Witness church, and it was for sale, but it was too small for us. And we had an architect that was a member of the church write up plans to see how we could expand. But if we did that, there was no parking. Everybody would have to park on the street, and it just was not a good place. It wasn't really big enough for us. And then the building that we're in now became available when Nina Haskins found out that it was going to be put on the market. And so she told Barbara, and Barbara said, well, let's go ahead and have the vote that we're going to move from the Opportunity House. And then after we vote, if we decide we're going to, then let's tell people about the building. So we did that. And it was a not quite unanimous, but almost unanimous vote to move out of the Opportunity House. And then Barbara said, and by the way, when there's a building for sale that everybody needs to go look at this week, and then next Sunday we would vote on whether or not this building would be appropriate. And it was appropriate, and we ended up buying the building that we're in now.
What year was that? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. Deanna might have that here. She got the history in front of her. Gosh,
1990.
about 1990, she says.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so about 30 years we've been here.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that
Keith,
would have been about 10 years after we started.
yeah. So Keith, when did you kick into this? When did you become actively involved?
Well, I met Pat when she was living in Atlanta, and she took me to Unitarian Church there. So that was a nice experience. And I grew up Catholic and always kept that in the back of my mind. And then we moved to Hendersonville in 72. Some point in there, we went to the Asheville Church, and it happened to be the weekend they were dedicating the Sandberg Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the distinction of almost killing Mrs. Sandberg. We were at the reception there, and I turned around quickly to go get another cup of coffee, and she was a tiny woman, and I turned around and started walking. She was right behind me, and I had to really hold myself from knocking her on her back. She was in her 90s, and it's kind of embarrassing. But anyway, we attended there for a while, and then the travel over there got to be just not enough to entice us to keep going. And so Pat started attending when we were in the op house, and then I attended with her, and she joined first. I did not join at first. I was still working and as a principal, and I appreciated my Sunday mornings, so I didn't get as involved at that time. I didn't get truly greatly involved until after I retired, and that was in 97, 96, 97. But it was in and out, and of course, I was with us when when we bought the new building. I've been to the Opportunity House quite a few times. Yeah.
Which one of you became head of the chair of the board first? I know you both have been.
Well, Pat was the secretary one year, and I was president. I think it's around 98, the first time.
Yeah, you've been at least twice, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
President of the board.
Yeah, I have fond memories of the op house. I know we had a fellow named Harold Eady who was a member, and
That's right.
Harold was nominated to be the RE program if a child ever showed up. And so he wasn't needed for a long time until Polly Crabtree came with little Elizabeth Schmalsky, her daughter, and Harold Eady rushed off and took Elizabeth to a separate room and conducted RE with Elizabeth. And the funny thing I remember is that Harold was a firm believer in flying saucers, but it didn't seem to bother anybody. He was our RE program just as well, probably. Entertained Elizabeth with tales of flying saucers, who knows.
Yeah.
But I also remember when we were in the op house that was very much all run by the members. Occasionally we had the minister from Black Mountain,
Pete Tollison.
Pete Tollison, who actually did the funeral service for Carl Sandburg. And Pete came over and did our services every once in a while. But the big to-do was the week or the month that we decided to order hymnals. And that was a great topic of great concern for a lot of people, because hymnals signified church. And a lot of people at that time they wanted to stay away from the churchiness as much as they could. And I've since learned that that's kind of a normal path with Unitarian groups. We started out as kind of pretty high, I thought it was a pretty high level discussion group. We had some, and we still do, don't get me wrong, we had some brilliant people in that church at the time, and so they could carry on the services themselves, and artists, we always had feedback. That was part of the Sunday, was the feedback. That's a part I miss, but I guess that's something that Jim McKinley didn't want to continue. And so we've gotten away from that on very few rare occasions. But I enjoyed that feedback because when I went to the church in Atlanta with Pat, the future president of UUA, his name will come to me perhaps in a minute, was the minister there, and it was incredible. And there, of course, you can imagine the people. It was a church that was built in the round, and so it was perfect for feedback, and it was feedback every Sunday. And that's what drew me more to the idea of Unitarianism, was the ability and the freedom to talk back, to question the minister, or question the sermon. And to me, that was a far cry from Catholicism. So that's one of the things that attracted me to it.
So was there a music director before Catherine? Who was the first person to?
Carol Sullenberger. Yeah, she was there for a number of years. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Then she retired and moved to Tennessee, and she was the one that got Catherine to come. So.
Oh, okay. Great. And then we got the piano about that time. How long have we had that beautiful grand piano?
Quite a while, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they had a music fund that they had started, yeah, and they had, it was when Carol Sullenberger was here, we had the piano.
Bought it pretty quickly after buying the building, didn't we, Wendell?
Yeah,
it was pretty quickly. Yeah,
it was.
Now, how did you find Reverend Charles Grady? Because he was our first minister. How did that come about?
We did a ministerial search committee, and Charles Grady was retiring from Boston, and he had a sailboat, and he was kind of looking to maybe move someplace and be maybe a part-time minister on the ocean, and use a sailboat, and we enticed him to come to the mountains instead of the ocean. But he just was a good fit. He just a nice, friendly person, and yeah. So, and I think Barbara Hosher was probably chair of the ministerial search committee, I think, when that happened.
Mhm.
But we interviewed a number of ministers, and he was the one that we chose, and he chose us.
Yeah, he retired in 1996.
Oh, from us. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Is that when Jim McKinley was called, right
Yeah.
after that?
Yeah.
So he was our first full-time settled minister,
He was. Yeah.
Jim. Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. Now, what about the religious education program? How did that get started? Either one of you could fill us in on that.
Well, that was a case of no children, so no program. And so we had to have children to have a program. Well, it was kind of, our kids were about the only ones, ours and Ray and Donna Bodie's son was about the only three for a long time. And then Polly Crabtree brought hers, and it eventually just gradually came about, but it was a long time in making. And that kept the younger generation too from coming to the church because they didn't have a RE program. And so finally we started Polly Crabtree's and ours, and gradually they kept coming, and finally we got some younger generation involved in that too. But it took a while.
Hmm.
And yeah, when we hired Vicky, then that really helped. We got quite a few children
Yeah.
coming up.
Yeah,
one
Vicky
time.
was a big asset there. She was good.
Yeah. When was Vicky Benavides hired? How long was she with us before? She just retired a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Finally, in 1991, an RE program was launched with an enrollment of 5 children. In the fall of 1996, we appointed our first director of religious education.
okay.
And that was Vicky.
So she was with us for over 20 years.
she
Yeah,
was. Yes.
yeah. And she
Yeah.
was a big instigator of having it growing.
Yeah.
She did a very good job.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah,
Keith?
I think at one time we had like 50 children on the list for RE.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say, both of you, all three of you, what were the major milestones? What stands out most to you as significant in the history of where we come and where we are now?
Of course, starting the church, that's it's kind of hard to believe that we actually started a fellowship, and then we got up to over 200 members, and then we hired Pete Tolson as a part-time minister. I think we paid him $100 a Sunday to come up from Greenville, and then sometime his brother was a Presbyterian minister and Unitarian minister, dual, and sometimes we would say something to him about, you have to remember you're at a Unitarian fellowship now, not the Presbyterian. So we really not coming to hear a Presbyterian sermon. We would like to hear a Unitarian sermon. So but we had him down for a number of times, and so it was nice to finally get a minister like Charles Gravy, and that was a big help, and that encouraged a lot of people to come to the fellowship. And then of course having Vicky as a RE director, that was just quite a step. And then hiring Carol Sullenberger as the music director, and then later Catherine, and it's just and of course buying the building was a big step. That's who wants to go into debt to buy a building, but we did, and it turned out to be really nice. And then when we remodeled it, I mean, wow, what a nice change that was to make it more intimate. And it's just not having the minister stand way up there. But but we never did get to use that baptism of a pet. We thought about maybe putting a hot tub in there, but
Yeah. Keith, do you have any particular memories that stand out for you as far as the major highlights over the years that you've been involved?
I think hiring Jim McKinley as our first full-time minister was a next, in my view, next to building or buying the church and then hiring Jim. I think that was a beginning of was a golden period, I think, for the church, for the fellowship at that time. The membership grew. We bought the office, or bought the office across the street, and the house next door. You know, we've added a lot of real estate in that time, and we had just a burgeoning membership that pushed us further into remodeling, which I think was a big feat. So those are the big things in my time that I've seen.
Thanks.
yeah. Then we did buy the 5 acres of land out on 64 West to build a new church out there because our membership was growing so fast. And then as soon as we bought the land, then the membership stopped growing.
So we used that money to redo the sanctuary, which was ideal.
Yeah.
Waste not, want not, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we could talk all day, but I think we're going to have to bring this to an end. I just want to say that we latecomers, I've only been involved for 11 years now with the fellowship, we take so much for granted. For us, there's always been talented staff, a very talented staff, beautiful music, a piano that has to be watered. That's another whole story. Hymnals for all. What a huge, wonderful, sweet success. Thank you all for creating this fellowship.
You're welcome.
Flop down. We thank you once again for being part of our extended congregation. We close with a benediction, also written by Dawn. There is always another story to be told, for each telling sparks another, then another, until my story becomes part of yours, and yours will be part of mine. Then one bright morning, we rise from our rest, and we will tell a new story for a new day, the story of one people at ease and at peace. Blessings for the week that lies ahead. We hope that something in today's story spoke to you, made you think, or will give you comfort until we meet again. Go in peace.
Very good.